Hello friends, thank you for jumping on board here with me. Again, this is Daily Art Adventure number 785, for those of you who are keeping score, both of you. And I'm calling it Final, and I don't want to say that that's a promise this time, until I break the promise, and it's not a promise anymore. Final Glazes and white. This, I did go back and count. This would be, not counting a little bit of pencil that I just did, this would be layer 9 and 10 on both of these paintings. Counting the pencil, which I usually do, it's layer 11 and 12. Did I say that right? 9 and 10. No, 10 and 11. Be layer 10 and 11. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. So as you can see, here's my painting so far, and here's my references. One of the questions I often think to ask both of myself and my students is, how do you know when it's time to go to oil? Okay, as you know, my paintings start out, hello David, I promise. That's right. If maybe this I'm pretty sure. Anyway, you do right. You do well to be skeptical. How do you know when it's time to go to oil? And the answer I typically give is when the drawing is almost perfect, correct. Not to get all perfectionistic, but when the drawing is essentially correct, when the values are essentially correct, and when the colors are essentially correct. All right, so that's for me, that's the signal that I'm ready to move on to oils. And that's the reason I'm doing yet 2 more layers. Now the reason I know I'm doing 2 is because I never finish with this glaze layer. That would be a serious violation of my technique. Not that I can't violate my techniques anytime I want to. I can, of course. But the reason they're my technique is because, generally speaking, they work. Oops, that didn't work. That didn't work. Speaking of working, I want this line right here is water, lake. We're in this scene, in this photograph. We're up on a hill looking down onto a lake through the trees. And fortunately, this is a commission for my dear friend Buddy, and my wife and I visited him last summer. So I've been here, and that helps quite a bit actually, because I can visualize. I know, so to speak, what I'm painting. I know the information the camera is giving me because I've been there in person. Does that make sense? Is that clear as mud? So I'm going to do, in pretty quick order, won't take me too long to do the glaze on either painting. I'm doing 2 paintings at a time here. I hope that's not terribly confusing. I suppose one of the reasons I'm doing it is I'm trying to help people who want to do maybe they're new to my channel or something. They want to do a fairly careful, study step by step of my crazy. So you can see I'm giving these broadcasts crazy titles. This last one I called it Dan Nelson's Counterintuitive Technique. Counter to traditional intuition, I would say. So that's why I'm doing 2 paintings at a time. So you can see essentially I'm doing them in parallel so far. So you can see the step by step. you probably can't see this, but I took, just before I started this broadcast, I took some time and pretty carefully drew Ellie, Buddy's service dog there, you know, pretty accurately. She'll get drawn a couple more times at least, but we're now, at least, as I like to say, within shouting distance of accurate rendering of Ellie there. She's a golden, some kind of lab. I don't know if you remember, it's a golden lab. Anyway, she looks like quite a bit, her face looks a lot like a golden retriever. Not the extremely broad, like a AKC golden retriever. You know, they favor those really lion-shaped heads almost. American Kennel Club. A little more typical. She looks like a golden retriever, except that her legs are a little bit longer, a little bit rangy, I think is the word I used before I realized that she wasn't a pure golden. And her tail is much, much finer, narrower than a golden. Anyway, I've got that drawing down. Now, there's one more thing I wanted to do on this, in the glazes here, before I move on, and that is I just feel like the overall painting, remember I said one of the ways I know it's time to move on is when the values are just about right. That means, of course, the lightness, light dark is just about right. And so I'm looking at this painting right now and I'm going, nah, it's not quite dark enough. So right now I've got some dirty green on my brushes. I'm going to add some more brown and ultraviolet and blue down here. I want it even darker down. Now, as you may know, is when I do my oil glaze, I very often really rely on the oil glaze to achieve a vignette, a darkening of the corners. So I can darken them even more as I proceed, but I want to go ahead and get them again close to the finished value that I want. Even up here, yeah. Okay, that's, and really for what I'm doing right now, I'm relying a little bit more, as you can see, on my gouache sketch than I am on the photograph. The photograph is quite a bit lighter, but when it comes to values, I feel like my sketch is more in keeping with what I want in the final painting. So. Finally, a little bit more blue on the asphalt path here. Now I'm lightening, taking some off here just a little bit. Little tiny bit of red down there. I like that. Do a little bit more of that. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's nice. All right, enough of that. Now let's go to the other painting. I don't know what the title of this other painting is going to be. Milk Factory. Sort of tongue-in-cheek-ish. You know what? I need to raise this easel up, so bear with me for just a minute. while I using this. This is a Carolina is the name of this easel, made by or distributed by Jerry's Artorama. It's a pretty practical design. Basically an H style easel, but one of the chief features of it is that the center pole here is adjustable. Turns out I am going to have to remove this again. Bear with me. Taking down this reference, which is very helpful. That the center pole can be adjusted, because if it's not adjustable, you're limited. You have limited headroom. This easel, I could bring that center pole down quite a bit. Of course, if I do, then my light will be right here in my face. So that's why I have it as high as it can go in this particular room. All right, enough of all that nonsense. Let's get back to painting. Milk factory, ice cream plant, Mayola. Let me show you my reference again. This is the picture, photograph I took in New Bern, North Carolina. And again, my grandson, 9-year-old Izzy, said, "Bigga," it's my name, Bigga, "don't do this one." He did not catch the vision, which is quite understandable. But as I have said earlier, I'm actually liking the way it's going quite well. It's a study in white. White road, again, let me point at the photograph for a minute. White road, white concrete, white car, white building, white clouds. I've made my clouds much bigger. So let me show you where that is so far. White road, white car, white buildings, white clouds. So a study in white, we could say. And I'm quite happy with the way it's shaping up at the moment. I'm thinking, this is me thinking. I'm thinking quite carefully about what I'm going to do. I'm putting some ultraviolet blue Thank you, David. I'm reading your chats, reading your comments there. You might be right. Oh yeah, the cart to the right is too small. Thank you for that. All right, so ultramarine. I hope to do a Santa this year. I have done one painting, not a close-up, but not a portrait, and I'm trying to decide whether I want to let it stand in as my. It's a picture, like a Hallmark greeting card picture. Well, some of you saw me do it. Well, I don't have it here. It's downstairs. Anyway, of a snow scene in a traditional old stone bridge, and a man in a man in a red suit, with a package over his shoulder. David, I'm looking at this, at my photograph. How small that car is. Yeah, I think mine is just slightly. Let me make some marks. Very slightly, so I'll make those changes later. Okay, now a little bit of phthalo blue. So this is, of course, not my last layer of acrylic, because the last layer is always white. That could mean with a tiny bit of opaque, of course, as well. What I'm doing right now is actually part of the best part of the lesson that I could give about how do you paint white objects. And of course, in my world, I paint everything with layers and layers and layers. And I would encourage that. Even if you don't paint like me, you don't paint my technique, still, the general impulse of painting in layers is a good one. And how do you paint white objects? It is by underpainting them in every color imaginable. That's one shorthand way of answering that question. How do you paint white objects? You underpaint them in every color in the rainbow, to use a colloquial expression, right? Now, I'm wondering, I'll try a little bit. I'm wondering if I want to warm up any of this area down here. And I sort of think I do. I'm not sure. I'm going to do a little bit, see if I like it. If I don't like it, I'll wipe it off. So I'm mixing up some yellow and orange. And as you can see, adding more GAC 100. It's a golden product. Yeah, that's too yellow. Oh, that's too red. Let me look at that. Yeah, that's too, no, it's too red. Let's go back and use some yellow, and then let's do some discreet use of a rag. There we go. That's all right, but now, like, that's the only part of the painting that has that much warmth in it. So let's just spread some of that warmth around a little bit, and then maybe we'll be okay. Let's see. Yeah. I like it all right, except I want to go back and add a little bit of blue purple down here at the very bottom. One of the most common tricks that I employ, and of course the danger is if you employ some trick too often, it's possible that you're in a rut. So, right? So I have to watch, am I in a rut? And I'm asking myself that seriously. Is I use what I've heard other people refer to as a threshold at the bottom of the painting. Generally speaking, most of my paintings are dark down here and the light is up here, so we step across the darkness into the light of the painting. And I don't think I'm in a rut, but I will continue to consider that possibility. Again, you have just a couple minutes, as you well know, a couple minutes to wipe off acrylic, unless you're using a retarding, a slow dry medium, which I don't want slow dry. Generally speaking, I want stuff to dry quickly. Anyway, so you have just a couple minutes, as I'm doing right now. Not everything's coming off, but some is. All right. I think I'm happy with that painting. my grandson notwithstanding. All right. Not picking on him, of course. He's thinking like a normal person. Most people would not see the beauty in that particular photograph. All right, so time to lower the easel back down again. Bear with me while I adjust it. Hey, while I've got it down, I talked briefly about the Carolina easel, and it's fairly inexpensive. In fact, I saw it on sale for like $130. There's a knob back here, just to show you, and this center pole telescopes inside this one. Do you see? So there, my light is right down in my eyes and in your way. But a very convenient feature. And I'll go ahead and put my reference back up. You can see how I'm doing it then. I've just got a squeeze clamp, I might call it. There we go. Okay, back to Buddy's Vale is the name of this painting. Vale as in valley, V-A-L-E. Whoops, and I didn't get it high enough, so hang on just a second. So this shouldn't take too long. David's giving me a lot of tips. Yeah, call it taller car, I agree. Hello, Paul S. Thanks for speaking up. And he suggested some ochre brown and beige for the sky. Maybe. And I could certainly do that in the first layer of oil, couldn't I? All right, so for those of you perhaps not familiar with my technique, as I said, this is my last layer of acrylic before I graduate to oil. And I probably will not be using any more of these transparent colors. I'm going to give them a spray of water so they don't evaporate, dry out on me while I'm waiting. And all right, let's just no more talking. Let's just paint. So virtually every time, so this is the third layer of white, and of course, you know, the most important aspect of, or element, I should say, in this scene is this beautiful sunrise coming through the trees. And every time I do a white layer, so this third one, I cover a smaller area than the one before. So like this layer of white is a subset of the last layer of white that I did. That last layer, the middle second one, had been a subset of the one before that. Does that make sense? So I don't cover quite as much area, so that I get the benefit of each layer, each phase. The subject matter grows richer, and that will continue throughout the oil phase as well. Most of the time, in one of my paintings, I only do 2 layers of white. It's a little bit unusual for me to go to a 3rd layer. But as you heard me explain a while ago, I want my drawing to be correct, nearly perfect, the color to be nearly perfect, and the values to be nearly perfect before I proceed to oils. And I found it not quite close enough. So now I think that's all the white I'm going to do. But some of my sky up here could stand to be lighter, just not white. So again, I'm going to violate my normal protocol and do some opaque, very pale blue. And warming up that blue just a little bit with some orange. That's too pale. Let's make it darker than that. Good, Cruise Hawk, I appreciate that. Glad that going back and forth between the 2 paintings is helpful, or at least entertaining, one or the other. Preferably both. Okay, so once again, I'm doing a slightly lighter blue, and I added a little bit of orange to that. Not so much yellow, because pale blue plus pale yellow, what color does that make? Green. And I don't want this to feel like a green sky. So the orange, a little bit across the color wheel, gives the impression of a warm sky, right? If it's this yellow orange here, it shouldn't be a, pure blue this close. So it's a warm blue. And again, all of this is a pretty good clinic on painting trees. In this case, it's a whole bunch of trees. But again, you've perhaps heard me say, how do you paint trees? The 2-word answer to that question is in layers. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Dark light, dark light, dark light. Assuming that the tree is in front of a sky, which of course it isn't always, but assuming the tree's in front of the sky. How do you paint believable trees? Back and forth, back and forth. And if my count is correct, I am at layer 10 right now. So in a word, how many layers have gone to make up the trees thus far? The answer is about 10. I am going to mix up a green now, so a pale green. I don't have a tub of green in this particular kit. I have 8 colors here in front of me. Let me point them to you, just for you newcomers, just for a second. Violet, cool red, orange, mid yellow, phthalo blue, and ultramarine. I find that distinction quite important. You can't get, in my opinion, you can't get all the colors you need if you don't have both a phthalo and an ultramarine, and then any kind of brown and any kind of white. So those are the colors. In my other, I have 3 kits like this, three acrylic kit, or well, not counting the big stuff. Counting the big stuff, I have 5 acrylic kits, but small acrylic kits, I have 3, and the other 2 have 9 pots, 9 little containers, and and I've added green to this mixture. But of course, green is the, what's the word? For me, it's the one color that, as far as like a tube of paint, or tub of paint in this case, it's the one color you need the least. Well, next to brown, I'm sorry. Brown is even less. Why? Because you can mix your own green, and frankly, you should mix your own green most of the time. You early journey painters, yeah, go easy on the green paint at the art store. I mean, don't buy any green, frankly. As if you were my semester-long student, I would say, no, don't waste your money. Don't waste your money buying green paint. Not only because it's wasting your money, but because it's probably keeping you from becoming proficient in the use of green. If your default setting is that green is a color that you buy at the store, then you're really missing a lot of instruction that you should be getting. So then when you do finally buy green, you understand that the only reason for buying green, almost, I'm exaggerating slightly, but pretty much the only reason for buying green is shortcut. Same thing for brown. Why would you ever buy a tube of brown paint? Just, well, two reasons. Speed up, shortcut, plus also the fact that I've mentioned many times that none of these colors are, in the physics sense of the word, none of them are perfect, none of them are pure. So they all mix and behave with each other in different ways. But that's getting a little sophisticated for your typical early journey, what I call early journey painter. So anyway, so if you're an early journey painter, don't waste your money buying green paint. Learn how to mix. Get comfortable mixing. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that green is a color that you buy in a tube. Okay? Then once you've mastered that, then you can buy green paint as a shortcut, and because of the manner in which a particular green color mixes with other particular green colors. And again, I've talked about that quite a bit, so I'm not going to chase that down any more than that. Okay, that's enough green for right now. After all, I've got 5, 6, 7, or 8 layers of oil to go after this. These paintings are far from finished. So I am, by the way, in this painting, violating, really on both of these, violating my normal process quite a bit by incorporating opaque acrylic colors. You understand? I sort of want, especially any newcomers, I want you to understand that the normal process is all the light stuff in the acrylic phase is accomplished with opaque white, and all the colors are achieved by doing glazes on top of the opaque white. But I do, as you can see, I'm violating that normal procedure quite often in this painting. And why? It's just something about the subject matter. Maybe it's the speckly aspect of the subject matter that is causing me to resort to colored acrylics. But if you want to imitate my technique, forgive me, don't do what I'm doing right now. Learn how to achieve colors by putting down white and then glazing them. Why? Because transparent colors, repeat after me, transparent colors are always more interesting than opaque colors, more rich, more complex. And I mean that in a scientific physics sense of the word. It's not a matter of opinion. Well, that's what you think. No, no, no. And again, I've gone over that so many times. I'm not going to repeat it all here. But if you want to chase my technique for a little while you're in the process of landing on your own technique, in a sense, I'm saying do as I say, don't do as I do here on this or these two particular paintings, because I'm violating my own system a little bit. Violating my system. Again, just to be clear, I'm violating my system by using opaque color. All right? Some members of the family. I've had the house to myself for the last couple of hours. It's been quite nice. I just heard a door open downstairs, so I may be visited any moment here by the cutest little munchkins in the whole world, frankly. You guys have grandchildren. I'm sorry about that, because I have the most adorable grandchildren in the world. Sorry about yours. And all you grandparents know I'm being as facetious as I can be. I hope you love your grandchildren as much as we love ours. I know you do. Yeah, somebody said grandchildren are God's reward for not killing your children. Horrible. But all you parents, grandparents, understand the truth in that, the horrible truth in that statement. I am having fun here, by the way. I think I'm happy with this path the way it is right now. I'm just going to leave that. I like the way this. Oh, I know what. There's an unfinished bit of business here. The tops of these rocks. I'm actually trying to mix up a gray, which is almost unheard of. In the it's kind of a greenish gray. This feels good. So this path, it's very functional in this case, because Buddy, as I told you, is in a wheelchair. And so I believe this path was built after he came home from his long, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm drawing a blank all of a sudden. Being in treatment, therapy, and so on for a long time. When he came home, this path was added. He makes much use of it, according to what we saw on our brief visit there last summer. And so it's landscape, like these rocks are placed here, quite intentionally by whoever did the landscaping. It's a beautiful path, and I can see why Buddy would want a painting of it. Buddy, I hope I'm doing it justice. Okay, I think I'm done. Just before I put this painting down, I want to show you again, because one of the most crazy aspects, one of the craziest aspects of my painting approach to painting is this abstract painting that I put down before I start. And the abstract, you can go back and watch it yesterday. I tried to make it the opposite. So I knew there's going to be a lot of green up here, so my abstract was a lot of red. I knew there'd be a lot of verticals, so I tried to make my abstract marks not vertical, right? And you can see all the red, basically all the red in here, especially right there, up here and here, even over here. All of that red is vestiges of the original abstract that was put down on the canvas. Hey, I'm going to change my mind here a little bit. Change your mind. I'm not going to leave right now. There's one fix-it I need to do. I'm finding this tree needs to be widened a little bit. I could do that in oils, but it's, for a change that significant, that important, generally speaking, it's the earlier the better. Why? Because I don't paint in opaque layers like a traditional oil painter, right? A traditional oil painter can add stuff at any point he or she wants to, because it's opaque, opaque, opaque. Not so when you're painting like me. So it's like more like watercolor. So in watercolor, you can't add things at the end, right? Because everything's transparent. And basically that's the same here. So anyway, I've just widened that trunk. I like that better. I'll tell you what, so I'm doing some dark stuff right now. And again, violating my technique by painting dark at the moment, right? This is not standard operating procedure. As long as I make that clear, so for those of you who may be trying to try out my approach, my technique, I just want to make it clear when I'm going off-road, off-book. So doing these little bits of dark that I'm doing right now is not traditional. All right, I'm going to have to interrupt my broadcast here because I just got a very important business phone call that I need to return here in just a minute. So, tell you what, I'm just going to pause, and so you won't get a notification when I come back. When I come back, I will be doing the other painting. This one right here. Okay? There we go. So forgive me for taking a little break, and I'll be back, I hope, in just a few minutes. Okay? Thanks. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye. All right, sorry about that. That, as I expected, that was a very important phone call. The good news is I have a big job coming up, doing a mural for a pharmaceutical company in Research Triangle Park. So, you know, when those when those kinds of jobs come through, like, you treat them with royal treatment. You don't leave them waiting for your callbacks. All right. This is a painting that I'm doing for nobody but myself, so to speak, and I'm hoping it might be good enough to be entered into a competition. This is the unlikely subject matter. My grandson, Izzy, 9-year-old, was exactly correct when he looked at that photograph and said, "Ooh, big guy, don't do that." He was speaking like a normal person. And I tried to explain to him that, well, this particular painting I'm not really doing for normal people. I'm doing it for my fellow artists. In fact, I tried to find, somewhere recently I saw on a computer screen somewhere flashed by a prize-winning painting in Oil Painters of America, which is indeed the exact competition that I'm trying to get into, be accepted in. I mean, the getting in is, you know, you can send in for $30, you can send in your painting. That's not the challenge. The challenge is getting accepted into the show. That's a huge challenge. Frankly, 2,000 of the best oil painters in America try to get in every year, and only 10% of them, of those 2,000, typically do get in. I have been in the national show one time. Ironically, the first time I ever tried 3 years ago, I got in. Last year, I was asleep at the wheel. The deadline came and went. I said, what? I missed it? Good grief. Sometimes I need somebody to hold my hand and walk me through life. I'm embarrassed to admit, but it's true. I missed it. I missed it anyway. But the 2 shows, I think, that I entered before that, I did not get in. So this is not the kind of thing that you hold your breath. At least for me, I don't hold my breath. And I hope for the best. Anyway, I was saying, I saw recently an award-winning painting, and it was essentially painting the scene of. Hang on, let me see if I get my monitor working back here. There we go. All right. It was essentially the painting of, if you will, a telephone pole, looking up at like all of this stuff. It was basically a close-up of a power line pole. That's all it was, basically. Sky, wires, pole. That's all it was. And it was a beautiful painting. And that's a pretty good example of what I mean when I say that artists are a weird bunch. We artists are a weird bunch. Most ordinary human beings love to see a beautiful painting of a beautiful subject matter. Not artists. We want to see a beautiful painting, period, and a beautiful subject matter. Like, for instance, my painting that you can't quite, yeah, you can barely see a corner of it down there. That beautiful rendering of a beautiful church steeple and street in beautiful Charleston, South Carolina, right? That's the kind of picture that a non-artist likes. You almost, not quite, but you almost get penalized in an art competition by painting a party picture. Almost. So, now let me be clear about something. I'm not, here's look at this telephone pole takes a jog. That's crazy. I'm doing this painting because I want to do it, because it appeals to me. Okay, so I'm not just spitballing and saying, well, maybe weird artists will like this subject matter. No. I like this subject matter, but that's because I am a weird artist, and I recognize that in many cases, my fellow artists are just that. They're weird. So anyway, so I'm not what's the word? Prostituting my gift, my skill, in order to try to win a competition. I'm quite the contrary. I'm painting what I feel like painting, even though this would probably be a challenging painting to sell in a normal art gallery, right? Because There's not many people that just want a painting of an industrial site, right? So I want to make that clear. I'm not just doing a weird painting in order to get in a competition. I'm doing a weird painting because I want to do it. That's why I took the picture years ago, and that's why when I stumbled upon it in one of my collections just the other day, I thought, ooh, I remember that photograph now. I'd like to do that one. All right, does it make sense? Making this car just a little bit taller. I think I'll clean that, clean the rest of that up in oils. It's of course real far off to the side of the painting, so I don't want it too accurate. I want it accurate. I don't want it too too tightly rendered. Okay, here's the biggest question in my mind right now is how much light do I put down here in this kind of a courtyard. I guess I'm going to say I'd rather have a little bit much light. Tell you what, I'm going to at least draw a line here where I need to fix this telephone pole. I think I'd rather have a little bit much light because darkening it in the oil layer is an easy fix. So I'm doing a bit of glow, can you tell? Fuzz layer in acrylics instead of in oil. Terry cloth rag, generally speaking, has a little bit more tooth, grabs the paint, so it's a little bit harsher, blunter tool than a normal cotton, soft cotton rag. Let me go back to a subject with this painting I've talked about quite a bit, is study in white. All right, so there's my photograph, white concrete, white cars, white building, white clouds. It's sort of like the joke, you know, polar bear in a snowstorm type of subject matter, except that I'm showing how one actually does paint. Maybe someday I should do that. That old joke, you know, the plain white canvas, put a picture of a polar bear in a snowstorm. It would be kind of fun to actually show people how an artist would actually paint a polar bear in a snowstorm. Anyway, so I've mentioned several times already in this clinic on how to paint white stuff. Objects, subject matter, subjects that are in fact, yes, white. How do you paint them? And the shortest answer is put down the white paint. Don't paint it with white. Okay, and I'm clearly violating that rule right now, but not really. Why? Because everything that I'm painting white right now is going to get a strong layer of color on top of it. Forgive again my halting speech. More important that I paint than that I talk. So painting part of my brain gets priority. Be that as it may, I'm trying to be cogent if possible, coherent. So I am indeed using white paint right now, but not in the way that typically a beginner would use white paint. I'm putting down white that's all going to be covered up. Quite strongly, I might add. It will not be a dainty, gentle, barely there kind of glaze. No, no, no. The oil glaze that I put on is, you know, pretty significant. And again, now you do use white when you're painting white object, of course. You use white, but whereas a beginner will be tempted to reach for the white paint early in the process, a good painter will pick up the white tube or the white tub of paint only in the very final stages of the painting process. So that will certainly be the case here. I will use white, but it'll be late in the process, and over a very limited, there's the key thing, over a very limited surface, limited percentage of this scene. Is that making sense to you? I hope it is. Sort of like what I'm doing right now, the white that I'm putting, even though it's going to be covered up in the very next layer with a bunch of color, even so, the white that I'm putting, right, in the photograph, it's a white road, white cars, white building, white clouds. The amount of white that I'm putting on the painting is quite restricted, quite limited. Not very much white at all. All right, so there's again that. How do you paint a white object? Glass. Put down the white. You know, don't pick up white paint. And yet, of course, when I finish, I absolutely want to give the impression that this is a pale, almost white road, white cars, white building, and white sky. And I am quite confident I will be able to achieve that effect. So it will look like a white building, a white industrial building. It will look like a white car, and so on and so on and so forth. So I don't mean, when I say if you're painting a white subject, paint it not white. No, no, no. I want to be clear that this is going to be a white building. And I know that this is an issue for many early journey painters, because I see early journey painters quite frequently in my career. Either I'm judging shows, or I'm attending shows, or at our monthly painters forum. You know, I rub shoulders with many early journey painters, and I cheer them on very much in their early journey painting adventures. Let's talk about composition for a minute. Generally speaking, when one speaks of composition, one is generally speaking about tonal zones. One is talking about light and dark zones, not light and dark pieces, like this line is dark. No, no, no. Like this area is dark, this area is light. That's, generally speaking, what one is primarily concerned with when that one is discussing composition. All right? Let's get that clear, first of all. And one of the simplest rules for achieving a good composition is your major, there's two options, either your major light area light areas, or singular light area, or either your major light areas or your major dark areas. Either one or the other, not both. One or the other should be describable in essentially one word, one descriptive word. Now, that's just one way to approach. It's one of the simplest ways. It's one of the ways that I find most helpful in my own art journey. So, hang on just a second. Let's look at this painting and evaluate it. Is either the major... Okay, so let's just talk about what is the dark area. Here, this is all dark. Kind of a dog bone shape. Kind of a big blob here, getting narrower, and a bigger blob here. Do you see? Can you picture kind of a dog bone? This maybe is a little bit of an interrupter to that. It's a little too big to ignore. And then, of course, it's dark down here, so it's a dog bone with a shadow of it. That's the dark area. And of course, it's dark up here. So maybe, you know, if I ignore that, then all of this is dark. Then it's kind of a dumbbell shape. Dark, big dark, narrow, big dark. Okay? So that might be the composition. But there are other options. Let's look at the light area now and see if the light area coheses, hangs together as a single shape. Forgive me, I know, again, when it comes to talking or painting, I really need to paint first, so forgive my halting speech. Okay, let's look at the light area. The light area is essentially almost an arc. It's kind of a big interrupter here, but if we squeeze it a little bit, okay, there's the light. A little bit of a interrupter here and here, but generally speaking, do you see? So I have an arc of light, almost a U shape of darkness. And so I'm abandoning the dog bone motif now and saying, well, just here's dark down here. I think that's more cohesive than what I described earlier. And because here's a hodgepodge, it's light, dark, light, dark, light. So that's a midtone. But dark, a dark U might be a good description of the painting, or a light arch. You can hear, I don't know what is the best answer, but either one of those are pretty close, right? There's some, you know, like I'm saying, some interrupters, some violators to either one of those, but either one is believable. A dark U or a light arch. That makes me think that it's, yeah, that might explain why the painting seems to be hanging together pretty well at this point. Now, again, to those of you who are actually painting, you're in the act of trying to produce a good painting, it's a good idea to settle on, to in other words, this stuff does not happen by accident, right? It's your job to make it happen. So once, as I have just done, and I'd already seen this coming, of course, but I hadn't named it quite as clearly as I just did. But once you see it beginning to emerge, then you see that pushing, exaggerating, accentuating, reinforcing, all those words are synonymous. Reinforcing that trans shape is one of the words I like to use for this. A trans shape, and again for anybody that's perhaps an early journey painter, when we talk about trans shapes, I'm not saying this is a shape of a car, or this is a shape of a building. This is the shape of another building. This is, no, that's not, those are objects. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the shapes that go across objects, and that's what you saw me do just a few minutes ago. Either when I called this an arch of light or a U of darkness. That goes across. And I said just last week or two, I remember sitting in art history class as a college student, and the professor would put up a slide of Fra Lippo Lippi, 1300s, I think, maybe 1400s. You know, the Annunciation, Gabriel, Annunciation to Mary. And he would say, do you see this shape? Do you see this triangle shape? How the whole composition, you know, coalesces into this triangular shape. He didn't use the word trans shape as I just did, but that's essentially what he was saying. And I clearly remember kind of sitting and looking and kind of squinting at that slide and going, I'm not sure. I think you might be exaggerating someone. I'm not sure the artist really did that on purpose. Well, that's what I thought as a 19, 20, 21-year-old student. Now that I be a 65-year-old, long of tooth. You want to see my teeth? Now that I'm an old artist, I'm thinking, heck yeah, of course, Fra Lippo Lippi and all of his ilk. Of course they did that on purpose. Are you kidding? Yes, they did that. Yes, they knew what they were doing. I don't know what language they used for it, but my language of calling it a trans shape, shape that goes beyond the, you know, shapes of things in their painting. Yeah, heck yeah. They did know. So I've become convinced that in most cases the great masters, they were great. They knew what they were doing. And it was not an accident. It took me a while to, I think, develop some visual sensitivity of my own to see that they were actually doing that stuff on purpose. It wasn't just my professor giving us information to regurgitate on a test. He was doing that too, but it wasn't just that. We have a member of our painters group, our monthly painters forum. We just met night before last. We meet on the second Tuesday. If any of you are local, you're more than welcome to join us. Send me an email or something and I'll put you on the reminder list. Second Tuesday of every month, 7 to 9 p.m. We've been meeting for the last several years in a church because it's just available to us. So it's real sweet of them to let us do that. One of our regulars, and again, some of us have been doing this for over a dozen years. Great fun and great benefit to one's painting career. Would not live without a peer review, peer group. Anyway, one of our group, a man named William Brazil, delightful, retired city management office, career in city management. This is something like William would paint. He's always painting industrial scenes, toll booths, airport terminals, construction zones. And unlike me, he's not trying to make a living as an artist. I don't know if he sells any of his stuff. I hope he does, but anyway, he is brilliant. Every time he showed us one again the other day, and I sort of roll my eyes in the best possible way. I imagine in 60, 80, or 100 years, I hope somebody's going to discover this guy that almost nobody knows during his lifetime. And they're going to go bonkers and say, what? What kind of freaking obscure genius was this guy? That's what I think about him. And very capable painter, but such an interesting vision, such an interesting, like I said, this is my style, and his style's not that different from mine. He's been influenced, he says, by me a little bit, because he paints oil over acrylic. He blames that on my influence. So I'm flattered, indeed. Anyway, William Brazil, if you get B-R-E-A, I think, Z-E-A-L-E, I think. I should know. Anyway, what delightful stuff. I had to mention him because I'm sitting here painting sort of like my good buddy William. I hope he's got his work on a website. I'm pretty sure he does. I think you can find him. Let me know if you do. I think you'll be tickled. Am I having fun? Yeah. Yeah. Pretty much. Yesterday, I had the house to myself for a while. Pardon me, I need to get a new in-ear monitor. Just a minute. Yesterday I had the house to myself during supper time. Nice treat, and I turned on YouTube and put it on my TV and watched a young painter who I will not name his name. Because bless his heart, I'm about to say bad things about him. He has tens or hundreds of thousands of viewers. You know, way more than me. He's a fairly young man, in his 30s, I would guess, maybe even late 20s. And he's one of those who paints. He's a classic early journey painter. Paints realism. And I don't want to expose, I don't want to criticize him. But I watched him one time before do quite a large painting. It's like 30 by 40 inch painting. And as far as I could tell, the largest brush he used the whole time was about this size. The entire thing was done tongue painting, is one of the terms I use. And bless his stinking hands and heart. My heart goes out to him. He has carpal tunnel syndrome. He paints everything. He holds his brush like some weird way. I'm trying to remember. I mean, very, very, very bad, awkward grip. And he has carpal tunnel, and the two are connected. And I want to jump through the screen and say, stop that, stop that. You'll be crippled by the time you're 50, 40. He's already crippled, and I'm not sure he's even 30. Anyway, there was a reason I said that, not just to criticize. And again, I'm not criticizing. If anything, my father heart goes out to him. It says, I wish I could send him a message, say, please, 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 get into the second half of life, of your art journey. Paint right? So he does purdy pictures, and they are purdy. They're purdy, 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 purdy. Sunsets, mountains, streams, rivers, waterfalls, reflections, just the whole shtick. I said that word very carefully. And he does a very nice job. Part of the reason I was mentioning him, though, is as not so then I can boomerang and start saying all kinds of wonderful things about myself. Other than to say, man, I am so glad I busted through the whatever wall that is from first half of art journey to second half, whatever you call it. And I could have stayed on the other side. My whole career, I was pretty darn good at painting realism. The point I want to make is that this kind of painting, what I'm doing here, is so much more difficult. I'm not, how can I say this without sounding like I'm just, I don't know what the word is, bragging? Now I just want to be on a teaching moment for some of you. Why is this approach to painting more difficult than realism? Now this, by the way, that presupposes that you have, I guess, a certain set of skills, which I do, and some of you do, in buckets, which is the ability to copy stuff, right? So that presupposes you have that established already. And if you do, then copying stuff is easy. Why? Because you don't need to think. Because all you're doing is copying. Whereas when you're painting what I call abstract realism, there's just one name among many, every stinking stroke matters. And of course it matters in realism too, because you're copying. But no, I don't mean it matters. When you're copying, you don't have to think. All you have to do is copy. On the other hand, when you're doing abstract realism, every stroke is a creative adventure. A creative decision is being made with every stroke. Does that make sense? Am I making that clear? And again, I'm not saying this so I can pat myself on the back. I'm trying to be instructive for some of you, because no doubt somebody will watch this and they're going, well, I don't know. Am I in the first half of life or the second half? And the answer is and I affirm this journey, by the way. I don't look down on people. Oh my goodness, let me make clear something. I do not look down on people who are in the first half of their art journey. And even my criticisms of the young man I watched I have a sense of compassion, almost heartbreak for him, because he's literally injuring himself painting the way he's painting. But I don't look down with contempt on anybody who's trying to achieve, realism. No. I think that's what everybody should start there, in my opinion. I taught a class at AOC this past month. I called it Abstracting Your Way to Good Representational Painting, or Good Realistic Painting. And that was for people who are too late on the journey and they feel like, I don't have time to learn how to paint. First journey, is there hope for me? And indeed there is. But I digress. I'm going to leave that for now, and I'll talk on that some other time. So I do not by any means look down on people who are struggling in the first half of that journey. I think everybody, in fact, so much so, here's one of my more radical positions, I suppose, is I think all college students, art students in college, almost all, should be forced, quote unquote. I mean forced, of course, that's ridiculous. You can't force anybody to do anything. But I think the curriculum, the art curriculum in the university and in a college should be all in the first half of journey. Simply teach people how to paint realism. That's all. Because they've got all the rest of their life to then expand from that into second half of journey. And most, frankly, 21, 2, 3, 4-year-olds are not developed enough, and that this is not offensive, but at least I'm not trying to be offensive. They should not be making decisions about their personal style, in my opinion. They should not be developing a personal style. They're too young. It's premature. Now, of course, everything I'm saying absolutely goes against basically everything that's been done in the academy for the last 100 years. So yes, I do take strong exception for virtually everything that is done in a college. I concur with what is done in most ateliers these days, except that the ateliers have taken themselves so dang seriously. And that's another problem. That's their issue. So I like their intention. I wish they would back off from the, what's the word I'm looking for? Doesn't matter. The uber seriousness of it anyway. Because I think if a college student graduated with an art degree, and he or she was a crackerjack renderer, see, I feel like they are then set up for a successful life career. Now, I think they should be introduced, of course, to the concept of second half of, absolutely, but I don't think they should be pushed in that direction at all. I think they should be told, now, the first half of the journey is all about skill in rendering. And if you accomplish that, then the door is open to you to step into the second half of the art journey, which is painting paint instead of painting things. All right, are you done? Glad we're done with that rant? I am. We can start giving them numbers. Rant number, like Daily Art Adventure. Rant number 728. I don't quite have one rant every broadcast. All right. Having said all that, doggone it, I think this is a pretty picture. Now again, what makes it pretty is not the subject matter. It is the paint itself. The composition, the contrast, the line, the texture, the values, the colors. That's what makes this, I hope, to the extent that it's beautiful. That's what makes it beautiful, is all those abstract elements, all those abstract issues. That's why we call it abstract realism. All right, and some of you are talking. Just a few. Susan, good to have you on board again. So I'm going to end here, and we'll see. I'm going to take a little break, clear my head, jog around the block maybe. Half a mile, literally around the block, half a mile. Then come back and launch into oils, which is, I enjoy that. All right, bye y'all.